Now we're talking. So a little bit about me. I'm a senior cloud training specialist at a company here in Chicago in the West Loop called Cloudbakers. We're a cloud migration company, and I'm a technical trainer. So I work with our customers to figure out what their end users need. A lot of it is change management and really helping people figure out, now that you're in this new workflow, this new environment, what's going to help you feel successful. And a lot of that, with the work I do, comes from previously, I was a Chicago public schools teacher. So I love that increasingly when I go to conferences, there are so many educators there, because I think that as educators, we have a lot of insights into being able to help people learn how to do things. There's a lot of overlap between how you learn skills as a child and how you learn a programming language. So any former teachers in here? No? Okay, that's cool. Well, you all are going to learn some stuff. So if you do hear me talk about a lot of teaching methodology, that's where that's coming from. The last slide on here, I'm always interested in people's tech origin stories and how they got into it, so I decided to share mine. I got interested in technology when I was a little child on AOL and downloading software programs I probably should not have. And, and even getting into some social engineering as a kid and pretending to be the terms of service representative and convincing someone that their account was compromised. So, yeah. Nowadays, I like to use my powers for good. I've been getting a lot more into studying social engineering, seeing the overlaps between that and cultural anthropology. I have a talk that I've recently given about social engineering and team building. So if you're curious about that, talk to me later. I promise I'm not manipulating you. So let's talk about this. What does risk-taking look like? Now, as I was planning this out, I wanted to get a sense of what Google Images said about this, because I feel like on the security side of things, there are so many hilarious stock photos out there, like the person in the hoodie, or now there's the hand reaching through the computer screen, and like it's so scary. So I was curious what risk-taking would look like according to Google Images. And a lot of these images look something like this. Usually it's the image of a person jumping from one mountain top or canyon across to another one. Or in this case, if you're a dancer, you can even do a split leap. So I can't even do that standing up, goodness. I also saw the theme of tightrope walking as representing risk-taking. This idea that you're doing something that's very daunting, and you're balancing and hoping that you don't fall off. My personal favorite is probably this lady. I mean, like, let's talk about this for a second. Like, let's really get into this. First of all, she's like floating. Like, look at where her foot is. She's barely even on this rope. And she's got a briefcase. My friends that I show this to, they're like, Olivia, clearly she's using the briefcase for balance. Okay, sure. But then she's also doing this power fist. Like, I want to be her. And I like her outfit too, I'm just saying. But of all the images I saw, the one that most resonated with me was this one. Because I think that oftentimes when I feel like I'm taking a risk and being on this tightrope, the path forward is not always clear. Like, I can't see the finish line. I know it's some kind of jumbled mess. Also, too, you know, when you're up high somewhere and they tell you, what, don't look down, and you do it anyway? Dude is totally looking down. But the reason I connect with this, too, is that he's kind of doing jazz hands as he's looking down, and that is totally me. So, with all this being said, I wanted to break down this concept of what redefining risk-taking can look like, because I really don't think that it's this. I think that one way that you can do this is by taking small steps forward. Risk-taking does not always have to be this big leap across a canyon. It can start with one small step, even something small that you're taking away from EmberCamp today. So when you get home, when you're working on these things and looking back over your notes, are you expected to do everything at once? No. Start small. Now, I mentioned to you that I used to be a Chicago public schools teacher, but I didn't tell you what it was that I was teaching. I was teaching middle school Arabic. And so I started learning Arabic when I was in college, and this photo here is actually from my very first Arabic textbook, like 15 years ago. It's funny to see where I wrote in the margins of words that I didn't know at the time, that I look at that and I'm like, I know what that means now. And as I was reflecting back on Arabic and also thinking about my own experience with risk-taking, I've been speaking at developer conferences for probably about the past 2 years now, but had to reflect and realize that I wasn't really doing much developing myself anymore. I wasn't sitting down and doing much programming because it's not my day job. I was afraid to get back into that because as much as I enjoyed meeting new friends and connecting with people and learning from them, I felt like an imposter. I felt like I wasn't good enough, that my code would never possibly measure up to theirs. But I decided, let me start with something I do know, like this, and put together something that can help me to create a tool that can help others, but also build up my own skill set. So I went into this, and my idea of risk-taking is, okay, I'll do this, but only if it all works perfectly right away with no mistakes. How many of y'all have ever felt this way? Like you're almost bargaining with yourself, right? Like that never happens. But I reflected again and realized the reason I feel this way is that I don't want to feel inadequate. I don't want to feel like I'm not good enough. But I want to tell you the story of how I actually did put something together. I decided to go back to vanilla JavaScript, and I built a tool that I called Triliterate. Now, without spending the next however many minutes giving you a full rundown of Arabic grammar, I mean, I love that stuff, but I know that's not what you're here for. The way that Arabic works is that you have a triliteral root system. You take 3 root letters, and then you can put them into a sequence together, and there are 10 different verb forms. It's almost like conjugation, but giving you a different meaning for how that word has been structured into the pattern. Almost think about like Mad Libs, but with Arabic. And as someone who was learning Arabic initially, this is the kind of stuff that when I was in grad school for this, having to memorize all of this was painful. It's tough. So I realized how I could put it together, and you choose your letters, and then after you submit, magic happens, and then you get your output on the right side. Yay. However, there were some small steps that I came across along the way because this did not work correctly the first time. Here's why. Arabic is written from right to left. And when I was writing this with my JavaScript, I realized, oh, that's left to right. So what happens when you're doing some concatenation and you're trying to bring together a variable with some Arabic text? The directionality just does not flow. Also, I found out that I needed to use Unicode to display these Arabic letters. Not too much of a problem when you think about it, but think about what it's like when you're sitting down and reviewing your code and making sure it checks out, that you don't have typos, that everything's as it is. I know Arabic, but I don't know the Unicode equivalents for that by heart, so I was thinking, why am I even doing this? This is the most painful thing ever. To illustrate this, I want to show you a snippet of the code here. So this is what, I heard someone go like, oh, right? So this is what it looks like. Oh, goodness, I'm looking at it too. Yeah, I'm having flashbacks, y'all. This is what it looks like when I declare one of those variables. So the Arabic 10, so Arabic in the 10th verb form. If you are piecing it together, every single snippet that you see here is either an actual letter or in some cases just a short vowel. But even the short vowels, even though those are little dots and lines and dashes, that's another Unicode character that needs to be thrown in. But once this is all put together, it put out something like this. So I'm feeling, okay, this is cool. I'm taking risks with this. I'm feeling some progress. But it was really frustrating to try to look at this and read it because, as I mentioned with the directionality, when I'm reading my code, the code goes from left to right. So you can see where it begins with that first character there. With Arabic, though, you have to start reading from there. I was getting so confused. I was thinking, I don't know JavaScript anymore. I don't think I know Arabic anymore. I don't know them together. But the beauty of this, see, look, I did an animation. Yay. So here, hopefully you can see that the colors pair up, that what's in pink, starting at the top with the 627 and the 650, that pairs to the character you see on the far right, which is the first letter I down on the left. And this is just one example of this. It is, oops, let me go back there. This, for me, being able to see that, it was, I just about cried when I saw that because it was proof to me that I could go from feeling like an imposter, feeling like I could not write any code anymore, to actually making a working product. So I celebrated, woohoo. But then I got to this third bullet point with some more directionality issues because, once again, I was coming up against code being written and read from left to right and Arabic being written and read from right to left. So taking just another quick look at this again, what you see here in the far upper right corner with Roman numeral 1, when I read Arabic, that's where my eye is trained to go. You always go on the far left side, or the far right side. See, I don't know my directions, y'all. But then as far as reading this code is concerned, I actually need to start it with the cell that's by number 6. And as I'm reading my code, it's like thinking, I'm thinking in this language, but I'm also having to think in JavaScript and what that needs to be. So it was really a struggle, but again, with risk-taking and feeling comfortable with this, what got me through it was taking smaller steps. Because when you take smaller steps, it makes it a lot easier for you to see your path. You're not making a big single leap across a canyon, but instead you're making smaller, more intentional steps and seeing, okay, if I go here, what can I do next? Let me take another small step, and so forth. I swear, after I did that first project, Trilitterize, I thought, I'm never doing Arabic and JavaScript again. But then I did, because apparently I did not yet have enough. I really was thinking back to my kids that I was teaching in middle school and thinking about what would have been helpful for them. There's no shortage of games out there for math, for reading, for science. There's nothing out there for Arabic. And what my students struggled with was being able to identify which Arabic letters connected when you're writing them and which ones don't. There's some letters that you draw, and then you pick your pencil up, make a space, and continue on. And I decided to make a little game like this. I love, by the way, how I put, this is a fun game. I'm like, it's really not that fun, but it's I say it is, so it's going to be fun. But the way it works here, and what I learned from this was, if you look at the letter that's on the right side, that's running through an array in a straight sequence order. And then I also had the letters on the left side, which are totally random. They're randomized. They don't have to be any letter there. So I was figuring out how to make both of those go at the same time, also making sure that the scoring mechanism would work at the bottom too. And did I do all of that at once? No. I figured out how to break it down, and because of that, I realized that taking small steps forward is still moving forward. It was wonderful at the end of each evening to feel like, yeah, I mean, I may not have a fully working product, but I've got something. I learned a little bit more tonight than I did before I got here. Now, with risk-taking, you're taking small steps, but then sometimes what can also happen is the idea that you may be reluctant to take on learning new things because you feel that it's going to take away from what you're already good at. Have any of y'all ever felt that before? Like you don't want to try to do something new because you think, oh, no, I'm good. Let me just stick here, stay in my lane. That's how I felt too. And to tell you about this, I want to share a story, but I have to go back in time a little bit. Anyone remember Blockbuster Video? Blockbuster used to be like where I would hang out as a kid. So what you should know about me is that my older brother and I, he's 2 years older than me, we used to go to Blockbuster every summer, or every summer they had video game tournaments, but we would go there throughout the year and always rent games and everything, but it was always leading up to the summer tournament. This is me and my brother, by the way. That's one of my favorite photos of us, like with the ski mask. Clearly, we were in a Grand Theft Auto before it was ever a video game. But we competed a lot. And for me, as a young girl, like 8, 10 years old, I was often the only girl showing up for these video game competitions. And I remember distinctly this one time, this teenage boy who was like 13 or 14 said to me, oh, look at you, so cute. You're here to cheer on your big brother, right? And I looked him dead in the eye and said, no, I'm here to win. Like, I was sassy. And I won. And I got my coupon, and they give you a coupon for a free video game rental. It was good stuff. I didn't feel like I was taking a risk because I was winning. Oftentimes, when you're feeling good at something, it doesn't feel like risk-taking. You're doing the thing that you know that you're already excellent at. Now, the game that I was especially good at was Street Fighter II Turbo. Now, when I show people this slide, they're like, oh, Street Fighter. I'm like, no, no, no. We need to get specific. Street Fighter 2 because there were more characters than Street Fighter 1. Also Turbo because it was faster and therefore a little bit more challenging. So this was Chun-Li, my favorite character. Every character in the game has a special move, and Chun-Li would just kind of like stand there and kick. She would just kick rapid fire. She also did this move where she would flip upside down and do a helicopter with her legs, but me being a little weird kid, I didn't want to do that. So what I would do is go to my brother's room in the morning and like literally kick his door open and say, hey, you ready to play? Ready to play Street Fighter? And at first he's like, yeah, that's cool. But there was one day when he said to me, nah, I don't want to play. I'm good. And I couldn't figure out why, because we would always play together. I didn't know what he was getting at. Finally, he decided to tell me what was going on, and he said, Livy, I'm sorry, but it's kind of boring playing with you because you only ever play as Chun-Li. So you can either choose to play as another character or just play as the computer or play against the computer, which playing against the computer is no fun because you can't talk smack against the computer. I mean, you can. It's kind of weird. So here I was faced with this choice. Do I take the risk of, trying to learn to play as other characters, or do I stick with what I know but not have as good of an outcome? And I decided, well, let me start small. I started by adding in Ryu. I liked him because he had a fireball. Chun-Li did not have a fireball. That was new to me because with Chun-Li just kind of standing there, you really had to be like right up against the person to attack them, whereas Ryu could hang out all the way on the side, he throws a fireball, boop, and like, wow, that was really interesting and fun for me. I also added in Vega. Any of y'all who plays Vega? Vega was like all over the place. I mean, he was this character who had this like claw on his hand, almost like Wolverine, but if Wolverine were a bullfighter. And his right? And his stage, if you ever played at his location, he had a chain link fence behind him. So if you executed the combination just right, you could do a backflip onto the chain link fence, crawl around a little bit, and then do a backflip and sneak attack against your opponent. He was really cool. Chun-Li could not do that. And it was a struggle at first, though, because for any of you who've played video games, you know, in order to do it well, you've got to get that hand-eye coordination down and execute it just right. There were some things that carried over between Chun-Li and these other players, but some of those moves were really new to me. I struggled at first. My brother was winning all the time, but I eventually stuck with it, and I got better. And the thing that really surprised me from all this was that even though initially I was afraid that I was going to have to give up Chun-Li, I found that the more I played as Ryu and the more that I played as Vega, the better that I got when I went back and played as Chun-Li, because now I was able to use their tactical moves to really reflect the way that I was using her character. And even though, yes, I'm talking about Street Fighter, it is the exact same thing with programming or any other skill that you're looking to enhance. Thinking about what you're trying to add in does not take away from what's already there. So trying something new, again, does not take away from who you already are. If you're feeling hesitant about taking a risk because you feel like switching to something else is going to change who you are, let me tell you, it's not that way. I mean, sometimes you just got to pick up a fireball and throw it at somebody, and it's good stuff. So the last part of this, I think with risk-taking, the way I would redefine it would be to shift towards a growth mindset. For those of you who may have never heard of this concept of a growth mindset, it's one of the main concepts that I learned about through my teacher training program, through a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. She has this idea that you have what's called a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, thinking about how you respond to the situations that you're in. Now, what I'll say about this is that having a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, these are not something that are like permanent parts of your identity. It's very much contextually based. So you can be in one kind of scenario and feel really open to it. You feel like you're growing. No matter what kind of setback you experience, it's a learning opportunity for you. In other contexts, though, or in other parts of the work that you do, you might see that as, oh no, I don't want to take any small step forward because that means that I'm a failure. It means that I quit. And as a teacher, this was one of the main things that I had to look out for in my students, because as children, every single day, they're constantly being exposed to new ideas, new concepts, new strategies that they're having to learn. And I, as their teacher, am faced with the responsibility of making sure that as much as possible, they're shifting more towards the growth mindset and seeing their setbacks as opportunities for growth. So how do you do this? And I'll tell you, this is not easy to do. This is not something you can say like, okay, overnight, growth mindset, yay, because even, I wish it were that easy, y'all. Even for me, I struggle with this. But what I do, one thing is to share both your successes and your struggles. If you are someone who only wants to share when things are going well, I mean, that's cool. But I think I've learned for myself that I've learned a lot more when I'm truly open about not just what I've done well, but what I've done wrong. And case in point, when I was earlier this summer working on one of my Arabic programs, I saw a tweet from my friend Lori, who was responding to a tweet that was asking about best practices for coding. And her tweet said, a function should do only one thing. And I looked at my code and I'm like, ooh, that function's doing like 10 things. So it was not good. And I had to recognize that and own it. It's not to say that you should never do that, but it was enough to really make me take a second look at the way I had written my code and realize I could have done it a lot better, and then also be open and candid to share that with other people, especially on a site like Twitter, where people are looking for inspiration. They're looking for ideas. I know that there's junior developers who have messaged me and said, thank you for being an inspiration to me. And I'm thinking, oh goodness. but also knowing that people are watching, I don't want anyone to think that I always get it right, because that's not going to help them when they get to that moment that they're struggling. And on the topic of struggling, I also encourage you to view your struggles and setbacks as opportunities to teach others. I know I say this because I'm a teacher and I never stop talking about teaching stuff, but at the same time, I think that if there's ever anything that you have personally struggled with, that's a learning opportunity. You can look at that, even the smallest thing, and realize, okay, what do I know about this now that I did not know before, and how can I then, in turn, flip that around and make it and present it in a way that someone else can learn from this and understand. And depending on what it is, if it's something really small, maybe it's a Twitter thread. Stepping up from there, you could do like a blog post about it. A blog post could lead to a podcast interview. And the more that you do this, the more that you are discussing your struggles and setbacks in ways that spin it so that others can learn from you. And in turn, they are feeling more comfortable with taking their own risks because they see what came out of yours. Here's an example of what I did for this when I was like, oh my goodness, left to right, right to left, what am I doing? And then perhaps this will be my next blog post, winky face. I was looking at this and I cringed, y'all. I was like, why did I put the little, you know how sometimes you look back on stuff that you wrote and you're like, oh, I was so different back then. This is from June of this year, so it was not that long ago, but I own it. It's okay. And the last thing here is, oops, wrong slide. The last is to seek out positive and encouraging communities. I cannot say enough about this because there have been times when I have felt stuck, when I felt that there's something I could not do or should not do, and I would send a message to a trusted colleague of mine and say, hey, I'm feeling kind of nervous about this. Do you think I should do this? And that friend would say, I believe in you, Olivia. You've got this. You can do it. And as much as you have other people encouraging you, I also recommend that you look for opportunities to encourage others. Like I recently posted on Twitter that for people who wanted help with developing their conference talk ideas, reach out to me. People did. And it's really meaningful for me because I know what it's like to be on the other side of that, feeling like you are afraid to take a risk yourself and not knowing where to turn for that. So I do really highly encourage to all of you, don't just seek the encouragement for yourself, but as much as possible, be that source of light for other people. So to sum all of this up, how can we redefine risk-taking? So there's a lot that goes into this, but the way that I think we can do this is to take some small steps forward, enhance your current skill set with fireballs and stuff, and also shift towards a growth mindset. Now, one of the traditions that I often have for my conference talks is that I like to start and end with the same kind of slides and visual imagery. And you know, we started with this question of what does risk-taking look like? Remember back with the person jumping over the canyon and the lady with the heels, which I still don't understand, but I thought about this, and to me, I don't feel that that's what risk-taking looks like for me. I think that as far as developing a better image of risk-taking for myself, this is the part I might start crying, but I wanted to show you all this picture here. This was 2 years ago. Why am I about to cry? Ooh, breathe. I got this. This was my first ever conference talk 2 years ago. I applied for 3 conferences, got rejected from 2, got accepted into 1, and went down to Tulsa Tech Fest. And fun fact about Tulsa, it is very dusty, and I'm very allergic to dust, so I was crying in there too with my eyes. I was about to give my talk, and they're like, wow, you are so passionate. I'm like, where's my Zyrtec? But this is how I see risk-taking, because this was taken about 15 minutes before I gave my first ever conference talk, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. There were these 2 teenage girls who were actively participating in the session. They were answering questions and just really engaged, and I didn't have a chance to speak with them afterwards, but about a week and a half later, I got a message through LinkedIn from someone who said that she was a business analyst out of Oklahoma City, and those 2 teenage girls were her nieces. They were tagging along with their cool aunt, and she just had to let me know that even a week and a half later, every single day, they were still talking about all the stuff they had learned from my session. And this came out, oh, okay, it's good. This came out of me taking a risk. And so as I wrap up, my challenge to you is this. I encourage all of you to redefine what risk-taking looks like for you. Chances are it's not going to be jumping over a canyon. It's going to be something that's a lot more personal and unique to you. And begin by taking those small steps forward. And most of all, live bravely. Thank you all.